The oceans of Runescape are hiding something.
The oceans are hiding something. There's something down there, under the depths or hidden out on secluded islands. Strange artifacts wash up on the shore, and the people who find them end up changed in a way that's difficult to understand. Whole cities end up driven mad, whole civilizations are reduced to rubble and snow and wind as their last few surviving occupants flee from the effects of these bizarre objects. These are the Blackstone Pillars. We knew nothing about them other than what they do to people. But that's not the case anymore.
What do they do?
The release of the sailing skill in Old School was the first real opportunity for the player base to explore the oceans of Gielinor, and there are some very interesting, very concerning things out there. Sailors salvaging from wreckages find odd relics with writing on them hinting at something sinister going on in the water. And something, unfortunately, quite familiar. We've known about a lot of this for quite some time. If you haven't seen my previous video on the Blackstone Pillars and their history with the Icando dwarves and the ancient city of
Okay, we might have to watch that because I don't know what a Blackstone Pillar is.
But regardless, we will press on because there are answers of a kind out there, but also a whole lot more new questions. With the release of sailing,
This reminds me of one of those videos where it's like, guys, you don't know what Antarctica is hiding. There's a reason they don't want us to go there. This reminds me of one of those. Or like, aliens built the pyramids.
A shitload of islands were added to populate the previously empty water. There's a lot of variety in these islands, from entire land masses with the Great Conch, housing an entire society and dozens of little points of interest, to much more low-key places like Dognose Island or the Crown Jewel. There's one island in particular though that's caught the eye of a few people who are skilled enough to visit it. With 87 sailing, if you go north as you physically can, through the frozen water that requires special equipment, dodge past the frankly terrifying vampire krakens, and you will eventually stumble upon a small, snowy, nondescript island. This is Grimstone Island. It's not much to look at a first glance. Some valuable ore can be mined here, runite, adamant, a new ore called nickel, and a small chest that contains some useful boat schematics, but not much else. Except, of course, for the entrance to a cave. And in contrast to its exterior, what is inside that cave is very interesting.
What is in there?
Climbing through the entrance reveals a tunnel flanked by stalagmites and spears. There are a few ice-themed creatures running around the cave, including the new frost dragons, but that's not what we're here to see.
Oh?
If you continue down the tunnel, you will eventually come across an interesting-looking furnace. 4 large columns, some skeletons, and a stone. Not just any stone, but a smithing mold. A mold made to smith a very specific thing.
What is it?
This is the ancient mold, and if you've been paying attention, you should immediately recognize that shape.
The ancient mold.
This mold,
that is
it would seem, was used in the creation of the Blackstone Pillars.
The pillars.
Immediately, about 1,000 questions come to mind. Who made this?
Oh my gosh.
How long has it been there? If there's a goddamn mold for these pillars, how many of them are out there? Let's slow down for a moment, because despite how barren this cave is, there are a lot more answers here than you might initially.
Guys, if they find out how who invented the pillars, we might be able to figure out where Joker is getting his Tylenol. Because he is on a lot of those pills. I'll tell you that right now.
Suspect. Let's take a step back and look at the rest of the room. 4 columns and a forge, all of which have some very specific designs. This is the Grimstone furnace. It is very much not a regular forge. As a matter of fact, it might look just a bit familiar to you, because it's using a lot of the design elements of the sacred forge of the Icando dwarves, located within Camdozel. While there are differences, this is almost certainly a forge made by the Icando dwarves, and the similarities do not stop there.
Yeah, it's possible that forge,
the ancient mold,
it's possible this forge is located in Malta, where Joker lives.
Might look pretty uninteresting, but the patterns on these columns are identical to patterns found in Camdozel, indicating that again, the Icando dwarves were behind this. There is more evidence. You see those skeletons? Those are not normal skeletons, my friend. Compare them side by side with a human skeleton, and it'll immediately become apparent that these are the skeletons of dwarves. This entire forge was made and run by Icando dwarves. Before we examine what exactly that means, and let me tell you, I've
So
got some
Joker
theories.
is
Let's
actually
have a
an
proper
Icando
look at
dwarf.
this ancient mold. Inspect the mold and we're told that it's unnaturally cold to the touch, even in comparison to the rest of the cave. Pretty clearly indicating that there is some kind of supernatural residue at play here. However, there's actually a secret hidden interaction that you can have here. If you bring the Blackstone fragment item from Desert Treasure 2 down here with you, the text on the mold changes. It once again states, it appears to be some sort of smelting mold. It's unnaturally cold to the touch, even in comparison to the rest of the cave. As you stand before it, you hear what sounds like a faint whisper, but it quickly fades. That's not the last we'll be hearing of whispers today, and it's also not the only secret interaction hidden here in Grimstone, but we'll get to that
This
in
is
a
some
minute.
deep lore, guys.
The examined text of the ancient mold states that it's incredibly old, a trait that it shares with the nearby furnace. So whatever happened here, happened a long time ago.
Zorosian.
Looking closer at the mold indent itself, we can see that it's meant to make a pillar of a particular size. If you recall, of the 2 Blackstone pillars that we know of, there was a larger and presumably more powerful pillar that wound up in Imcandoria and then later Lasar, and then there was a smaller pillar on Mostly Harmless. And this mold is a perfect fit for the smaller Blackstone pillar. You can even line them up, and accounting for the portion of the pillar buried in the ground, it's clear that this mold was meant to make this pillar, or at least an identical copy. I think that what is being communicated here is that the smaller pillars are mass producible. The book Imcandoria's Fall details how the Imcando dwarves of Imcandoria were wiped out by the influence of the larger pillar.
Ooh.
The city was emptied out and the dwarven sages had gone mad trying to summon some
They got
kind
greedy,
of
tried to
creature.
get too powerful and make a bigger
Simultaneously,
pill.
We've now found evidence that seems to indicate that at some point
Too much Tylenol is actually a bad
in
thing.
the far past, Imcando dwarves were trying to mass produce lesser pillars. What does this mean?
I'm following.
Here is my theory. Firstly, based on how different the effects of the 2 pillars are, I think it's a safe bet to assume that the larger pillar is much more powerful than the smaller one. Let's call them the greater and lesser pillars respectively. We've seen that the greater pillar is capable of essentially mind controlling large groups of people who are exposed to it.
Oh no.
In Lasar, this
That's
led
dangerous.
to a cult that all gathered to worship the
Mass
pillar.
mind control.
But in Imcandoria, it led to the city emptying out with only the sages remaining. My theory is that the missing citizens of Imcandoria were exposed to the pillar, and from its influence they were magically compelled to leave the city, find hidden locations like Grimstone Island, and start the process of mass producing lesser pillars to spread the Blackstone influence even further. That explains why the Grimstone furnace is clearly Imcandorian in design, despite the fact that the Blackstone pillars destroyed Imcandoria. It explains why there is a mold specifically for the creation of lesser pillars there, and it explains why there are the dead bodies of 2 dwarves right there, as we've seen in the past what long-term exposure to the pillars does to someone. As a matter of fact, we've actually seen that exact same
Turns you
series
into
of
Alfie.
events play out before. In Desert Treasure 2, we're told about some of the dwarves of Imcandoria who remained under the control of the pillar long after leaving the city. They're the ones who brought the pillar to Lasar in the first place and ended up dying from the effects of that pillar. So I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that it might have happened again at Grimstone.
Gambit for Synapse already happened. You missed
As
it.
for now, that's about as far as we could take this information. But there's one last secret hiding here in Grimstone Dungeon. The Ring of Shadows and the Ring of Visibility allow you to peer into something known as the Shadow Realm. We
Right?
don't really know exactly what the Shadow Realm is,
The
but
Upside
it
Down?
seems to be an additional layer of reality that exists on top of our reality. We know that the Blackstone Pillars have a very strong connection to the Shadow Realm, to the extent that you could actually
That's the realm C engineer uses to troll people.
visit the Shadow Realm while in the area of influence of Lasar's Greater Blackstone Pillar. If you equip your Ring of Shadows while in the Grimstone Furnace, you'll see nothing at first. But if you linger, you'll notice them. Every now and then, hands coming out of the water, grasping at the air before being dragged back down below the surface.
What?
They're very much not human hands. They only have 4 fingers.
Oh!
Maybe they were human once, but now, who knows?
Raids 4?
But that's not quite all. If you go back to Lasar, down into the Church of the Silent Choir, and have a look at the walls, you'll notice something interesting.
Oh, that's the same thing.
Drawings of 4-fingered hands with an eye in the middle.
Oh no, this is Raids 4.
Like I said at the start of this video, there's something under the water. The Grimstone Island is only the tip of the iceberg.
Uh-oh.
As a part of sailing, you can loot old destroyed boats and wreckages for salvage, which you can clean up at a salvaging station to turn into actual items. Very rarely, there is a chance that you will find one of these 8 rare items. The rusty locket, the moldy block, the dull knife, the broken compass, the rusty coin, the broken sextant, the smashed mirror, and the moldy doll. Now, while these items might just seem like random junk at first glance, you can actually take them to the curator at the Varrock Museum, who'll have a closer look at them for you. And he tells you that on each of these 8 items is a rather concerningly familiar inscription. There is an empire of darkness where hope flickers and dies. There is an open wound that bleeds only darkness. There is a stranger that wears a black mask under their skin. There is an ocean of souls where you are one day fated to swim.
Wow.
There's a choir of souls who you will one day meet. There is a king whose court is made of corpses. There is a priest who prays for the oceans of dead.
Oh,
and finally,
no.
There is a monument built in honor of the suffering you desire. While inside the Shadow Realm in Lasar, something speaks to you while your sanity drains away. These inscriptions are identical to what those whispers say. It's admittedly difficult to conclude what this means exactly, but it sure sounds like these relics came from people or civilizations that had contact with the Shadow Realm through the Blackstone Pillars and ended up at the bottom of the ocean as a result. Maybe these civilizations encountered a lesser pillar created by the Icando dwarves, but regardless, they don't seem to be around anymore for us to ask. However, that's not where it ends. If you manage to get all 8 of these items from salvaging, which is not an easy task, mind you, with their individual drop rates hovering somewhere around 1 out of 3,000, you will unlock some very interesting dialogue with the museum curator. You know, that's quite a few items you've brought us that have some sort of strange text on them. Do you think they're all connected somehow? Well, it is rather? Yes.
Costume, man.
When the darkness falls upon you, do you see the spires of the Eternal City? When you look upon it, do you hear the songs from within? You all right? The choir sings in unison, but the song is one of silence. It cuts through the waves and pierces the veil until only one question remains. What is this? Oh, sorry about that. I lost my train of thought for a moment there. Are you sure? You said some strange things a moment ago. I was just talking about how you keep finding things with these rather strange phrases on them. Slightly chilling, isn't it? Slightly chilling, yeah.
Oh god,
this is obviously a concerning conversation, and once
corrupted.
again heavily mirrors the whispers of the Shadow Realm. But we're not deep underneath Ice Mountain or riding around in the middle of the ocean. This is a conversation that takes place in the heart of Varrock. There are a variety of interpretations that you can draw from this. Perhaps these 8 objects being in close proximity is sufficient to replicate some amount of the impact of a Blackstone pillar. Maybe that's why, despite being made of wood and string, they've managed to survive at the bottom of the ocean for so long. Maybe the curator is a secret cultist, but I doubt that. I do want to say that this is not the first time we've encountered someone who says a lot of very concerning things related to Blackstone, only for a moment later to have no memory of it. This exact same thing happens with Kettler.
It's kind of like you get corrupted for a second. You know, it's like holding the ring in Lord of the Rings, and you say some weird sussy stuff that you would have never said before because the power of it seeps inside of you. for just a second.
who was actually Sliske during Desert Treasure 2. During that quest, it seems like this
Very Yogg
fake conversation
dude.
resulted far more from the impact of the Blackstone Pillar on us, the player, rather than on Sliske himself. I think that at some point the question changes from what's wrong with this person we're talking to what's wrong with us? I think we might be hallucinating these interactions.
We might be poisoned. And we might be hearing stuff that he's not actually saying. It's easy to think that somebody else is crazy.
Due to having come in contact with the Greater Pillar in Desert Treasure 2. However, that's admittedly a flimsy theory, as you can have this conversation with the Curator without having completed Desert Treasure 2. But then again, it could be that bringing these 8 objects together imparts some kind of concerningly similar effect. But that makes you pause for a moment, doesn't it? These 8 objects are being displayed at the Varrock Museum in the middle of one of the most important human settlements.
That is true. That is true, guys. In Desert Treasure 2, we spent a lot of time in that Shadow Realm. Especially people that died to the Whisperer a lot.
Kind of impact on people here, now. Maybe we've got a much more urgent threat to worry about than something maybe washing up on the shores from the ocean. For now, that's all we know, but the information at hand is teasing something. Something is coming. Also, while I won't go into too much detail about it right now, there are other new islands with some very interesting lore implications of their own, like Brittle Island, which has a very mysterious door on it that, if opened, will apparently end the world. I've got some thoughts on that, but that might be for another video. Maybe subscribe if you want to stick around to see that. Of course, I have to mention that what we've got right now is just the first part of sailing. We could see all the oceans and all the islands, but a large amount of them are currently completely inaccessible to the player due to dangerous waters that we can't right now navigate. There are a few of these places on the map that I want to draw your attention to. Everything I'm about to say is pretty heavy speculation based off not a whole lot of information. But listen to this and tell me that it doesn't sound at least a little familiar. The Eastern Ocean is entirely unexplorable and yet contains several things of note. Right off the bat is Mostly Harmless itself. You might remember that I recently theorized that the Blackstone Pillar on Mostly Harmless washed ashore from somewhere one day and caused a variety of unique effects on the local populace. Being able to actually sail around and inspect the waters surrounding Mostly Harmless might lead to some interesting discoveries. But the main thing I want to mention is the entire bottom right-hand corner of the map being taken up by a cluster of islands called the Cursed Archipelago.
Okay, Raids 4?
The Cursed Archipelago is surrounded by waters whose name evoke a lot of the Blackstone imagery. Forbidden depths, tainted tides, shrieking waters, and I can't help but notice that the islands of the Cursed Archipelago seem to be covered in some kind of black rock. Black stone, even.
Ooh.
But the most direct piece of evidence that links this to everything else we've talked about is the most visible part of the Cursed Archipelago. And that's the water itself. The Cursed Archipelago's water is specifically called profane water. And if you have a look at those visual effects in the profane water, you might notice that they look a little bit familiar. As a matter of fact, those are the exact same visual effects that you see inside the Shadow Realm in Lassar. It's almost like a localized version of the Shadow Realm existing on top of our reality. Or maybe the Shadow Realm's influence has grown so strong in this corner of the world that you no longer need a ring of visibility to see it.
Dang.
As much as I would love to get an actual look at the Cursed Archipelago itself, since it's so close to the safe waters around the Great Conch, putting aside the damage that the water deals to you, there's actually an invisible wall where you can't sail any further, just out of render distance of the closest island. I found this out by stocking my boat up with repair kits and suicidally sailing directly into it, only to have no actual luck. So for now, they will remain a mystery. Okay, that was a lot. Let's sum up everything we've talked about here today.
It could be that shamanism is coming into the game, you're right.
Grimstone furnace
We don't know
was
yet.
used to create blackstone pillars by Icando.
What if the black stone is making us all hallucinate that sailing is actually a thing, and we find out that we're still on land and that the sailing skill does not actually exist, and the only way to cure yourself of the illusion is to level shamanism, to cleanse yourself.
Dwarves, specifically the one on Mostly Harmless, and possibly others, going by the salvaging relics. My theory is that it's the missing populace of Imcandoria that were behind this, and that there's possibly a whole lot more places like Grimstone Island, spread out across the water, or maybe even underground. There's a consistent motif of hands, especially four-fingered hands, clawing their way out from the Shadow Realm, pretty clearly hinting, to me at least, that something is trying to cross through. Next, the salvaging relics. These are being pulled up from the water and seem to have traces of the Shadow Realm on them. And bringing enough of them together seems to impart a small fragment of the hypnotic effect of the Shadow Realm or the pillars. I also want to take a quick moment to highlight the symbol on the rusty coins specifically. To my knowledge, we've never seen that symbol anywhere else. So I'd ask that you keep an eye out for anything in future updates that looks like this.
2 triangles equals Illuminati. And one of them, if you turn the coin, then it makes 2 pyramids. One for the real life and one for upside down, which means the Illuminati is everywhere.
Because to me, this hints at an entirely extinct civilization, large enough to have its own system of currency, that possibly sank underwater from the effects of the pillars. Finally, we have the most obvious next direction for this storyline to go, and that's the Cursed Archipelago. Connections there aren't as solid as the rest, but the names of its oceans and the giant black stones that seem to comprise it, and the water having that visual effect of the Shadow Realm, well, there's definitely something going on there, and I think we'll be sailing out there and finding out what that is decently soon. To me, at least, the Cursed Archipelago is absolutely the next step in this mystery.
Gotta be.
Now, unfortunately, I can't give you any kind of nice, grand, conclusive theory that ties all this new information together right this second, as what we're working with here is clearly meant to be teasing something coming in the future. But I hope I was able to at least...
Chat, World of Warcraft does this with its raids. It slowly drops off hints. Like when Nyalotha was coming, N'Zoth was slowly corrupting the world, and you could see like tentacles starting to form everywhere. And this might be a similar case where they're slowly introducing hits at what the next bad guy will be.
Highlight what's going on in the waters of RuneScape just a little bit more for you. If you enjoyed what I've had to talk about, consider subscribing, because there'll be more coming eventually.
It's called foreshadowing.
If you've got any thoughts or you've noticed something I'd missed, I'd be super happy to hear it. I found I quite like making these little videos, so I expect to be putting out more in time. Stick around if
dope
you're
video.
interested. Right now I have my eye on the Fremennik, but that might take a while. They have a lot going on. I also have my Ultimate Iron Man series kicking off again soon. A lot of the inspiration for making these little videos comes from the weird shit I get up to on that account, so check that out if you're interested. Anyway, that's all I've got for you for now. Stick around, and I'll see you next time.
Yo, that was a dope ass video. It actually made me made me believe that maybe something's going on out there, guys. It kind of freaked me out a bit. That was some good discoveries, and it actually seems like Jagex was putting those clues in the game for him to discover exactly what he discovered. I think it had too much coincidence involved in that and all of that stuff. So that might actually be what's happening here. Has Jagex ever done things like this before in the past, where they hinted and dropped hints like that at different stuff, like foreshadowed things that were coming out all the time, 100%, loads of times? Dang. So they use sailing as a way to hint at what could be coming out. And it seems like maybe they're either A, hinting at Desert Treasure 3, or some type of new boss, or some type of Raids 4, or some kind of thing. Really cool. That's sick. Raids 4 for sure? That's what you think it is? Could be, man. Could be.